All right, so because I accidentally hit stop just now and I paused, the recording will be in two parts this week, right? All right, so this is The Dark Time I Love by Martin Carter. You all know what country Martin Carter is from? What country is Martin Carter from? Guyana, yeah, he's from Guyana, right? Okay, so let's see if we can figure out what is happening here in this poem. This is a dark time, my love. All around the land, brown beetles crawl about. The shining sun is hidden in the sky. Red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow. This is the dark time, my love. It is a season of oppression, dark metal and tears. It is the festival of guns, the carnival of misery. Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. Who comes walking in the dark night time? Whose boot of steel tramps down the slender grass? It is the man of death, my love, the strange invader watching you sleep and aiming at your dream. Okay, so what is happening in this poem? A man is talking about his love for his country, oppression. The man's wife is dying. This is an interpretation I haven't heard before. All right, invasion. Okay, good. All right. Well, probably not slavery, probably not colonization. He's talking about war. Okay, how do we know he's talking about war? What are the suggestions that tell us war? Festival of Guns, yeah. Definitely. Now, there are some other subtle hints that suggest war. Strange invader also tells us war, yeah. Boot of steel, yes, yes. Because who's walking around in boots of steel? Probably soldiers. Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. So everybody is tense. Man of death, yeah, right. Now, there are other subtle clues that he doesn't come out and say things, right? But brown beetles could be the tanks that people drive around in. Red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow could be that everybody is sad. So the flowers could actually be people, right, who are sad. The words oppression also tells you. Okay, great. Watching you sleep and aiming at your dreams. Yes, somebody has a gun pointed at you when you're asleep. Is a very scary thing, right? Because that's when you're most vulnerable. You're not awake to defend yourself. A shot to your head will probably kill you. And also it symbolizes they're trying to shoot your plans for your future. They're trying to stop your plans for your future. Brown beetles could be soldiers in camouflage. Yes, that's true. All right. So first verse, this is the dark time I love. All around the land, brown beetles crawl about. This shining sun is hidden in the sky. Red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow. So nature itself seems to be sad, right? As well as this could be a way of saying that there are tanks or military vehicles in the land, as hope is lost, that people themselves are sad, right? The second verse, this is the dark time I love. It's the season of oppression, dark metal and tears, the festival of guns, the carnival of misery. Everywhere, faces of men are strained and anxious. Could the red flowers be wounded soldiers? Well, they probably meant to conjure up that image, but just the fighting doesn't actually break out in this poem, right? It's more like there's the threat of war. Soldiers have come and they've said, if you step out of line, we will kill you, or we will fight you, and we are stronger than you. There's a threat of war. It doesn't actually break out in this poem, right? Because it uses the word oppression. Everyone is sad and worried and anxious, but war itself isn't being described. Right, the red flowers are more like the innocent people. Okay, Who comes walking in the dark night time? So they came under the cover of darkness and they continue to threaten people under the cover of darkness, right? Whose boot of steel tramps down the slender grass? It is the man of death, so someone who's coming to kill, well, the person he's talking to, the strange invader and invader. Yeah, watching people sleep. So they come, yes, they come when Guyana, sorry, when people are at their most vulnerable, when they're sleeping. Okay. All right. So let's look at so we understand in general what is happening, right? Let's look at a synopsis of the poem here. Right. So first one, the speaker is addressing a loved one who may or may not be a person. It could be a person or it could be the country he's talking to. So you all can take down the notes on the slide. You could do it in point form. If you have your own notes on this already, you could compare it and see if there's anything you want to add or discuss that's not in what's on the screen. All right, so in verse 1, he's warning the person he loves that the dark time is upon them and that there's the threat of brown beetles in the land. Right, there's a lot of sadness and there doesn't seem to be any hope. The sun seems to be hidden. Then in verse 2, he's warning his loved one, whether that's a person or the country, that oppression is present in the land. Guns and misery are there to oppress them. And people are anxious and they're feeling the strain of this, right? Because everywhere men are strained and anxious. And then we have verse 3. I'll go back to the poem in a second, right? No, I don't think there's writing in this poem. Right, so verse 3 says the speaker is referencing a strange invader. What is the strange invader doing? They're stamping down the grass of the land. They're threatening the loved one again. In the person's sleep, they're pointing a gun at them. Right, so it's both a physical threat, but it's also a threat to the person's future. All right, so let's make our notes on this. And then I'll go back to the poem, the slide before with the poem, so someone could screenshot it and then we will continue, right? All right. Now there's another interpretation of the poem involving something that happened in Guyana's history. Anybody know what it is? If you know, you can put it in the chat. It's not exactly war that happened in Guyana. Something else happened involving Guyana and the US. Yeah, okay, so the US invaded Guyana. So y'all are still writing, right? But we're just discussing. What is the US deathly afraid of coming to the Caribbean? What does the US not want in the Caribbean? Because they think it will lead to instability in the US. Somebody knows socialism. Diego said socialism. Socialism / communism / what the Russians believe, right? Right. So I'm going to make a little note up on the screen in the corner. When you're done, you could add it in. Just to keep in mind, it could be helpful for us to interpret the poem, right? So the US has never wanted socialism and or communism in the region, right? Remember the US cut ties with Cuba for how long? And only recently lifted the embargo on Cuba, right? I'm just checking for the exact year the invasion would have taken place. 1983. So you don't need to remember the year, but I'll put it in just because we're making a note. It will make it clearer if you're revising, right? So the US fearing that socialism was taking root in Guyana, invades the country. Oh, we could say invaded, because that happened in the past, right? In 1983. All right, I know we have to go back to the poem because a couple of people need to screenshot it, right? We will in a bit. So the poem is often read as a poem about this invasion and people feeling threatened, and the US coming with its guns and its soldiers and its violence to intimidate the Guyanese, right? Guiane is actually the French spelling, not the British spelling with a Y. So if you write Guiane, people will know what we will know what you're talking about. We will know you mean Guyana with a Y, but it's more commonly spelled with a Y. Okay, so I'm just muting myself. I know this is kind of a long note. I'm muting myself so we can take a note. In 2 minutes, I'll check and see if we need more time, right? And then it will be 1 o'clock, and then we will only have about 20 minutes left because I want to give the last 10 minutes for questions. So let's see how much we can get through. All right. Anybody still writing? Okay, so a couple of people are, go ahead. Just a reminder that in verse 3, the speaker references a strange invader. Who then is the strange invader who is stamping on the grass and threatening the loved one, right? Oh, there's an error in the last thing. Thanks, Nikin. Nikin pointed this out. I thought we were looking at the first part, but you were looking at the second part. Come, guys, there's an error here. Anybody else saw it? I'm gonna put this in pink to make sure it is bright and everybody can see it, right? This could mean that the speaker is a threat to the future or a physical threat to the person. This should be that the invader is a threat to the speaker or to the person. So if you happen to be on autopilot and you wrote down speaker, just change that to the invader, please. Thanks, Nikki, again, right? And maybe possibly you fixed it when you were writing, because sometimes we just fix the errors that we see and we don't even notice there was an error, right? Okay, I think most people are done. Okay, now I just put a short note on top, right? But history students will probably have a lot more detail if they've done this US relations in the Caribbean already. And they will know that Guyana was in fact trying to adopt socialist policies because that's what the leader felt like they needed at the time to help the people in Guyana, right? History is clear on that. And the US said, no, that is not acceptable to us. We are going to come to your country under the guise of saving you or something and occupy it until you mend your wicked ways. So when the speaker is saying that they're aiming at the dreams of the country, it's really aiming at the dreams that Guyana has for itself, as well as the dreams that the loved one has for himself or herself, right? All right. Can I go back to the screen before? No, or is anybody still using this? Some people needed to screenshot the poem. All right, so most people have indicated that they're done. Could the dreams be about independence? Well, you know, they were independent, but it's their dream for their future. It's how they want to run their country in the future. Okay, right. So here's the poem. So independence, they already have technically, politically. So independence in the metaphorical sense, maybe, to do what they want and not be bullied into something else by some other country. No, this is not a case of colonization. The US didn't go there to colonize Guyana. They went there to tell Guyana, change your policies. We cannot have the Russians so close to us. All right, so whomever needs to screenshot the poem, by now you've done it. We can continue. All right, now if you have to talk about war in the poem, let's write it out on this slide. Let's see what we can come up with. What does this poem tell us about war? The other poem told us war is really brutal. People don't realize how harsh war is. What is this poem telling us about war? Right, good. So the first thing we need to clarify, like Amelia is saying, and Anjana is saying, there's a threat of war. It's not actually, the poem is not actually depicting war. It's depicting the threat of war, right? And it tells us that in war, your loved ones could be lost. It could harm the environment. And one other thing, if he's not talking about the loved one, but the loved one is really standing in for his country, what's it telling us? It's a bad time for people, that's true. It could harm the country and the country's future and the country's goal for itself, right? Good. So when you are asked, oh, is this poem telling us about the brutality of war? What do you think? Where is it showing us the brutality of war? What line could we point to and say this is the brutality of war? Right. So we have to be clear. It is not showing the brutality of war, but it is suggesting the brutality of war when it talks about a gun being aimed at somebody's dreams, right? It's suggesting, and also when it says Festival of Guns, right? And Boot of Steel and Season of Oppression, and it's suggesting too how people are during war, tense, so strained, anxious, all those things, right? But it's not depicting the brutality of war in the same way that the other poem did. This is like a different kind of war. Well, okay, so someone is suggesting that it's showing the effects of war. It's suggesting the effects of war. It's not showing it outright because there is no outright war in this poem. Right? Yeah, okay, good. So it's emphasizing that our mental health could be affected, right? It's suggesting that there could be violence, the terrible effects on nature and so on, but it's not showing the brutality in the same way as the other one, right? Yes, a lot of fear, definitely. Possibly depression. All right, so let's go to where our notes are on war. All right, and we are going to add them in together based on what you all said, right? Oops. Okay, I have a little shifting around to do here. Okay, so we're looking at theme. I will zoom in or out so it could be a little bigger. Right, so the poem details the threat of war, the threat of an invader. Okay, so let me put the threat of war through an invader who has come to land is threatening the well-being of those who live there, right? So the poem shows, and now let's put in the points that you all came up with. So the poem shows that war has a negative or could have a negative impact on the environment, right? That's a very unique thing that this poem does. If we take it literally, right? As the flowers bend their heads, what else? The grass is trampled and there are brown beetles everywhere. Right? What else is the poem saying about war? Let me look back at the chat, some of the comments. All right, it hints that in war, or it shows that in war, one could lose one's loved ones, right? So the poem shows that during a war, loved ones could be lost. So we said the point, we said the idea, now we have to give evidence, right? As the speaker mentions the invader aiming at the loved ones, at the sleeping loved one. Right? Okay, and then you also said the threat of war is also, it causes a lot of anxiety. Right? So the threat of war also causes anxiety, and people are strained and anxious. So I've repeated anxiety and anxious kind of close together. I shouldn't do that for an essay, but I'll leave it so for now, right? All right, so 2 minutes, then we'll talk about patriotism. All right, now what is the poem saying about patriotism? What is the poem saying about love for one's country? Does the speaker love his country? Yes. How do we know he loves his country? He feels sad, right? Because there's a war. Is there anything he's trying to do to help, assuming that his loved one is his country? Yeah, he does seem to be trying to warn the country, right? He's trying to warn them, right? So as a country, right? The loved one is under threat, right? The speaker tries to warn the country about the threat and express his own worry and sorrow, which he shows. So we need to put in some evidence. So if he says when he calls it the season of oppression, right? That tells us he's feeling sorry or worried for them, right? Is he telling the country to fight, to get up and fight back? Is he? Is he telling them? If he is, right? Is he telling them directly? Okay, so Jada is saying he seems to be telling them to sort of more brace themselves. And if he is telling them, he's definitely telling them indirectly. Yeah. So he is speaking cautiously. And perhaps referring to soldiers and military indirectly, right? Boots of steel is used instead of the word soldiers. And brown beetles possibly to refer to tanks. Why would he refer to all of this indirectly? Why would he make indirect references to the war? Why would he be so cautious? Right, he could get caught and probably thrown in jail. If people just invade your country, then there's nothing for them to pick up a poet and fling him in jail, right? Yeah. So there's might be looking at what he's doing. Now, actually, I do think Martin Carter spent some time in jail, but I would have to double check that. All right, so all of this reinforces the idea that there's a threat of war coming, right? You know, I was so excited when I started to use this PowerPoint theme, and now it's just annoying me. There are all these small elements that have to be moved all the time so that things can be seen, and I don't think I will use it again. Right. Okay, so Isabella is saying that he was in jail for 3 months because he's a political activist. Yeah. Is a poem like this more effective than just coming out right and saying the US is in Guyana, we need to get them out? Or be careful, they might shoot you. Is this poem more effective, you think? All right. So mostly I'm getting yeses. Because it triggers emotions, readers' emotions, right? And feelings. And it might help you have a feeling of togetherness with the other people in your country. Because all of you all will be in it together, and some people are just saying no. Okay, so another interpretation could be that the brown beetles are soldiers, and the dark metal could be tanks and guns. Yeah, that could be true too. But I really meant to say that the brown beetles are tanks, that they look like tanks, that they crawl around, like they move slowly. They're kind of shaped like a beetle. Their color could be brown, right? But the brown beetles also could be soldiers. And dark metal could refer to tanks and guns. All right, it's 1:20. So again, we didn't get through the devices. For homework, can you please try to look back at the poem? So I'm putting this in the chat, right? Look back at the poem and see what devices you can find. I have a slide with them, so let me see, let me get to the slide. So for homework, the other thing you could do, well, I just wrote out a list and I didn't write out the examples. So for homework, let me write it on this slide. Find the examples. and explain why they are, or how they develop the themes. All right, explain how they develop themes, right? So just try it for homework. The same way we did the discussion for this dulce decorum is, you'll do it for these. Just try it. All right, and here's a picture of a tank that I wanted to make sure we saw to help us visualize how a brown beetle could be compared to a tank, right? I don't know exactly what kind of tanks they had, but this is just one that I found. I thought, okay, yeah, we should look at it. All right. Yeah, so I'll go back to this side before the homework in a second, right? But I'm going to wrap up here. Sorry, I switched without asking you all. This will be the homework, right? So take a screenshot of this if you need to, or write it down quick if you need to. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just 4 things. And you're trying to find the examples and explain how they develop the themes, right? All right, so I'm going back to the previous slide. So once you have the homework and once you're done with the note, then we'll stop here and I'll see you all next week. Right? Next week we want to start West Indies, USA, and South. So I'm going to stop the recording now. And if anybody has any additional questions we didn't get to, you can put them in the chat and I'll try and address them now, right?